There's a sense of pride for many Americans in our identity as a melting pot. But until the early part of the 20th century, the United States had been deeply segregated. That's when millions in the Jim Crow South decided to uproot their lives, hoping to live the American dream. A few months after the Confederate Army lost the Civil War, the 13th Amendment was signed, abolishing slavery in the United States. But in the nearly 100 years between the signing of the 13th Amendment and the signing of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, something happened that would go on to shape the nation.
At the beginning of the 20th century, 90% of the African American population lives in the South, under conditions that can really only be described as oppressive.
There's enormous levels of violence.
Author Brett Gadsden teaches history at Northwestern University.
Lynchings were a fairly common occurrence. Race riots were a fairly common occurrence. I think so common that we ought to consider them a kind of normal way of being in the Jim Crow South.
And African Americans are looking for ways to fight back, are looking for ways to participate in the democratic process to overturn this system as American citizens. They were traveling from one part of the country to the other.
As Eitan Michaeli, author of The Defender, How the Legendary Black Newspaper Changed America, points out, what would come to be known as the Great Migration started with great journalism.
Publishing was a fraught enterprise for African Americans in the South, but people did it very courageously and oftentimes risked their lives to publish information that they felt their readers needed to have. There were a lot of publishers that had to flee after they published something, and there were people that weren't able to flee and were caught and were killed. The Defender was unique for decades, really, in exposing the horrors of Jim Crow segregation in the South.
African Americans were literally running for their lives. What makes the Great Migration so important in the kind of larger history of African Americans and in the United States general is the sheer enormity of the numbers.
During the first wave of the Great Migration, between 1910 and 1940, it's reported that nearly 2 million blacks left the South.
African Americans, when they migrated to these northern cities, they faced many new challenges, and some challenges that look a lot like the ones that they forced to flee. The problem of police violence seemed to, follow African Americans wherever they went. Housing segregation, school segregation. I don't think they were under any illusions that this was like, in a literal sense, that these places in a literal sense were a promised land.
African Americans, yes, are coming to the North because there are jobs in the North, there are opportunities in the North that are not available in the South, but to be frank, they're coming at a time that there are jobs in the South as well. There are steel mills in Birmingham just like there are in Gary, Indiana. What's different is that in the North, there's the opportunity to vote and to organize and to participate in the political process in a way that is not available in the South.
I think it's important to understand the extent to which we have the emergence of these new, concentrated, and in quantitative terms, pretty robust black voting blocs. We begin to see white elected officials begin to attend to the questions and concerns about their black constituents who can vote. If black voters didn't have the option to elect black representatives, they certainly were positioned strategically to weigh in and determine the fate of one or another white candidate. So much about African Americans and the ways in which they've resisted their conditions, the ways in which they've resisted racial subordination and white supremacy, is about perfecting the Union. It reveals to us the ways in which African American history is a national history.
We look to media often what we're doing.
National Association of Black Journalists President Ken Lemon says the black press is proud to continue pushing for justice for all.
There's almost always much more work to do. We every now and then, and I talk about this with people who have the opportunity to be in the media, say, you know, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. And then there's always that caveat, but if our ancestors knew what we're capable of today, would they stop here? Are we doing enough to say that we stretched the bounds the way the defender did? Are we doing enough to make sure that coverage duplicates what the defender was doing at its station in time? And so the challenge never goes away.
In all, it's believed that 7 million people moved from the South to the North between 1910 and 1970. 500,000 stayed here in Chicago. The statue you saw in our story is a 15-foot monument in Bronzeville. If you look closely, the travelers made entirely of shoe soles, representing the thousands who made the journey, forever shaping the nation. Thanks to producer Tyra Martin and photojournalist Brad Piper for putting that together.